This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast. Hello, welcome to Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. I'm your host Claire, and we've got an important mission this month. It is Brain Tumour Awareness Month, and we're shedding light on a crucial issue. Brain tumours claim more lives among children and adults under 40 than any other cancer. Shockingly, only 1% of the national spend on cancer research is allocated to this silent threat. But fear not, because today, right here on Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show, we're taking a stand. We're not just talking statistics. We're sharing stories, real heartfelt stories from people all around the globe who have been touched by a brain tumour. It's time to raise our voices and spread the word. By listening in, you're joining a movement to make a difference. So today I'll be speaking to Holly. So I'm going to give Holly a call. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you that you're going to be a part of Brain Tumour Awareness Month and share your story. I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to help. I had a wee look at your website and I didn't see any stories for the kind of tumour that I have, the central neurocytoma. So I thought, oh, do you know what? Yeah, I'll just speak to you today because I thought, it might be somebody else looking at the stories and looking for a kind of tumour that I've got and they don't see it.
Thank you. That's really kind. And it's true because there's so many. And then it would be nice to see someone that's got the same.
You're right. There's so many. And I don't know about you, but I didn't know anything about them till I was diagnosed.
No, I didn't have a clue.
But it seems like once you're diagnosed, there's so many people that you come into contact with and they all have brain tumours or neurological issues and it seems so common and you think, how did I not know anything about this before?
Yeah, it's true. Shall we go back to when you started to have symptoms and you felt something's going on? Take us back to then.
I've always said I didn't have any symptoms. Looking back now, I probably did have a few. The first symptom I noticed was right in the middle of COVID 2020. I was seeing little black dots in front of my eyes, like fruit flies, that kind of size, just going in front of my eyes. But I thought it was when you look at a light and then you see little dots for a good 30 seconds after you've looked at that light. That's what I thought it was, or either that or dehydration, because I know when you're dehydrated sometimes those kind of things can happen. So I put it down to that. I never thought anything of it. And the only other symptom I had was kind of memory loss, not even memory loss, just couldn't retain information. I would read something and go to copy it onto the next piece of paper and I couldn't remember it. But I put that down to the fact that I just had, my son was 1 at the time, I just had him. And I put it down to just the fact that my brain was just crumbling, baby brain. Looking back now, those probably were symptoms, but they were never enough for me to think that there was something wrong. And I'm not the type to ignore symptoms. I would never ignore anything. I always make sure if there's something up, I'm getting checked, even more so now. But back then, I never would have put it down to anything. It was only on the day when everything happened that I had the worst symptoms. So I suppose the way that I found out was quite, I don't know, traumatic in itself. I was at work one day and I started getting, just out of the blue, came in for my dinner at work, started getting a really sore head. And within about 10 minutes, I was being sick. I've had one migraine, but I don't regularly take migraines. And I thought it was something to do with that. So from there, I then was sent home for work, spent a couple of days in bed. And then when I would normally go and see the doctor, I couldn't because it was COVID. So the doctor, and plus I was too unwell, doctor came out to the house, looked at me and sent me straight up to hospital, but nobody could come with me. So I was up at hospital when I got the diagnosis and I didn't have anybody with me at that point. I was in a kind of, I wouldn't even call it a waiting room. I was in an area of the kind of clinical assessment unit that they had moved the bed out of and put some chairs in and called it a waiting room because they weren't allowed waiting rooms in COVID. So I was in this area, open plan, and the doctor came in and saw that I was upset and said to me, "Oh, I take it somebody's already spoken to you to give me the result of my scan." And I said, "No." So at that point, he told me, but I didn't have anybody with me. And being in a hospital, there was no phone signal. I tried to phone my husband and tell him, and he couldn't hear me. I could hear him, and all I could tell him was that I'd had a bleed on the brain. And he kept saying, "Holly, I can't hear you. Can you go outside?"
Oh, no.
And yeah, from there, it was horrible. The whole kind of time I spent in the hospital after that, was very lonely. My parents were never allowed to visit me. It had to be the same person the entire time I was in hospital. So my husband, it was only him that was allowed to visit me. And we stayed about 30 miles from the hospital that I was moved to. So he was making that trip every day to see me, because if he didn't see me, nobody could get in to see me. So that part of it was hard. And when I think about it now, it just seems so silly. It seems so silly. That was the rules at the time. And at the time, we didn't think anything of it. We didn't question it because it was COVID. It was this big, scary thing. But
Yeah.
knowing what we know now, it's crazy to think that it could have been so different if the regulations were different, or if it happened at a different time. I could have had family there with me, going through it with me. And I think it made it harder for them as well, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, of
They probably just
course.
felt really detached.
How long did you have to wait in hospital to then have any treatments?
The doctor initially told me I had a bleed on the brain caused by a large mass, was what they said. And at that point, I said to the doctor, "Can I have my family here?" And his reply was, "I don't know." And then he walked away and he left me in that waiting room. And I never saw him again. So eventually, I managed to get a hold of the ward phone to phone my husband, and he came up. And then I was transferred to a specialist hospital that had a neurology department, because the hospital I was in didn't have any neurology departments, so they didn't really know how to interpret the scan properly without kind of speaking to Edinburgh. So that was kind of scary in itself, because I didn't know what I was looking at, and they couldn't tell me what I was looking at either. From finding out, it was actually pretty quick. I didn't wait around a lot. I was blue lighted to Edinburgh, and then the next morning was my first surgery, and that was to have an access device put in to drain the fluid that had built up on my brain. It's called hydrocephalus.
Yeah.
And it's basically a build-up of fluid, and that was to put an access device in. So that
Yeah.
surgery was pretty quick. After that, I was sent home with a date for future surgery. I think it was maybe, if I remember right, it was about 3 or 4 weeks ahead. They had to kind of plan it, and there was two surgeons going to be doing it. So they had picked a date that they were both on duty and they could both do it, kind of thing. I ended up, that was brought forward because after I was sent home, the pressure built up again. So I was back in again, getting the pressure drained or the fluid drained again. And because of that, they brought the second surgery forward. The second surgery was to remove most of the tumour. So the wait wasn't as long for that as it should have been, because the pressure had built up again. My tumour is a central neurocytoma. Central is just where it is in my brain, and the type of tumour is a neurocytoma. The doctors told me it's about 95% smaller than it was. The part that I'm left with is the part that attaches to the side of my brain, or part of my brain. So they can't remove that because of the damage it would cause. And then I ended up having a third surgery after the tumour was removed. The fluid or pressure built up again, and I was admitted again, and I had a shunt fitted at that point to drain the fluid. It was an anxious wait, even at that, even at a couple of weeks, it was anxious. But just being so young, I was only 27, I had a 1-year-old, that's what made it scary. That's what made it scarier, is doing all that so young, so on my own, and so worried about what was going to happen to my wee boy. That was probably the worst part. I would say I would have found it easier if I was to go through it now again. I would find it easier because I'm that wee bit older. But again, that's probably down to the fact I've already been through it and I know what to expect, you
Yeah.
know.
Because you were going through COVID when everything was going with lockdowns and things, did you have any information? Were you able to reach out for some support or anything whilst this was all happening?
I did get was before the second surgery, which is where they removed the tumour. I had an appointment or a meeting with a neuropsychologist.
Oh,
They
good.
came in and saw me while I was admitted, and they carried out tests on my brain, function tests, to see where I was at and how the tumour was affecting me in different ways. And she was actually very helpful. She kept in contact with me a lot, and although she was a neuropsychologist, she was there. She did say she was there if you're feeling down, if there's anything happening that you don't understand, phone me. I'm available anytime. And she was brilliant. After the surgery, in the second surgery where the tumour was removed, she came back again, and did some more tests on my brain to be able to compare the before and after to see where I was at. And she followed up quite a lot. She phoned me maybe 2 or 3 times just to see how I was, see how I was settling in back at work, what my plans were for the future and stuff like that. So she was brilliant. So yeah, credit where it's due. They were really good.
Since your surgery, did you have any reasons to need help?
Once the shunt was fitted, I was, and I still am, a bit apprehensive about it because I've heard stories. And the doctors, the neurosurgeons, they told me as well that it's quite common to need a shunt revision. The shunt can get blocked or it can get knocked out of place, it can stop working kind of thing. But so far, and that's me 3 years now, so far so good.
It's quite
Keep my
amazing.
fingers.
Yeah, it's amazing you can just leave it there and have it to the rest of your life. You won't even know it's there. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I just can't believe how much they can actually do now.
Mm.
And it's just a tiny little tube that they showed me. It's just a tiny little tube, and you think, how can that be if effectively saving my life every
Yeah,
day?
yeah.
I had Georgie, I had a wee girl, so I managed another pregnancy, and they told me with the shunt the risks can be a wee bit higher, but we managed that. We're fine, back to work. So yeah, I would say I notice my memory not being what it was, and my kind of ability to focus probably not being what it was and retain information. But I suppose that's to be expected. Somebody's been in and scrambled about with your brain.
Yeah.
So
Post surgery, did you need any rehabilitation?
after the second surgery, which was the surgery to remove the tumour, I couldn't walk.
Mm.
I really struggled to speak. I struggled to use my fingers on my phone and knife and fork, stuff like that. So I got a physio to help me learn to walk again really quickly after. And the physio was great. They had me working on my balance because my balance was away. They had me up and down stairs, I think, pretty quickly as well. With the kind of physical side of things, yeah, I got that, and that was great. It really did lots for me, and it got me back on my feet as quick as I possibly could. Kind of mentally, any kind of support services there, I haven't had anything, but I probably, if I felt I needed it, I would reach out for it, and I would go to my GP and I would get it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to dwell on what's happened because I don't want to worry myself about it again. I don't want to forget that it's happened either, but I'm quite happy just getting on day to day, getting
Yeah.
through the day to day.
Because you have still got some of the tumour, which they seem very happy that it's stable and they're not worrying about it. Are you going for 6 monthly?
Yeah, I did get 6 monthly MRIs up until December just past there. And that was to check on the tumour,
Mhm.
and the size of it and if it was growing or anything like that. But the most recent one in December just passed showed that it was still stable. I'd been getting good results recently, so the last one was it's still stable, it's not grown. So my neurosurgeon's put me up to yearly ones now, which is great news again because he feels like he doesn't need to monitor it every
Mm.
6 months. He's happy to look at it every year. So I'm happy with that. That's another positive. The neurosurgeons had said that I potentially had this tumour since I was really young. I was 27 when I was diagnosed with it, so potentially 10 or younger. So the type of tumour that it is was so slow growing that even if it was to start growing again just now, it might not cause me any issues until years down the line.
Yeah.
So if they were to look at the MRI and see that there was a growth just now, it doesn't necessarily mean they need to do something just now. It
No.
might just mean that they want to monitor it and see what it does, just because of the nature of it, that it was so slow growing in the first place. Yeah.
Have you met someone that you're able to connect with because they have been through something similar?
When I had the shunt fitted, they had shaved a bit of my head, and I get extensions in my hair. So I had gone to a kind of hair loss specialist that's 2 miles up the road from me and had her help me come up with something to put in my hair instead of my extensions.
Mm.
And she was saying that she has neurological issues. I don't know what they were, but that they wanted to fit a shunt to her for that. And I couldn't believe it because I was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks post shunt surgery and had never heard of it before. Never mind meet anybody that's got one. And she was telling me that she was being considered to have a shunt fitted, and I just couldn't believe it. But how crazy is that?
I
That
know.
I would run into you today. But other than that, I've not met anyone that's had the same tumour as me. I don't think I've met anybody that's actually had a brain tumour.
Is there anyone that you'd like to say thank you to? Is there anyone you want to show an acknowledgement or any?
I suppose you always thank your family, don't you? Because what
Mm.
would you do without them? I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what I would have done without them. But on another note, probably the neurosurgeon that dealt with me, because he is just the loveliest guy, and he's not. I just see after the second surgery when I was okay, I just wanted to give him this massive cuddle. And I know that's probably really inappropriate. And he seemed like the type that was maybe don't touch me kind of person. But he was so lovely. And I just wanted to give him this big cuddle. I remember James, my husband, he went to the gift shop, or not the gift shop, sorry, the shop at the hospital, and he bought a box of Lindt chocolates for the neurosurgeon. And I remember handing them and saying, I know that you just saved my life, So here's some Lindt chocolates, and thinking that will never be enough to say thank you for what you've done. But it's the best that I can do. I can't do any more than give you a box of chocolates and say thanks. But he honestly was brilliant. And I'm sure that had it been any other neurosurgeon, they would have done the same thing. But I'm just so grateful for him, because he's just, what it must take to be a brain surgeon, I've no idea, but he's just something else.
What's his name?
Paul Brennan, his name is.
That sounds like a
brilliant.
celebrity. I know he's a surgeon celebrity, but that sounds his name looks like
That's what I was
something.
going to say. It sounds like somebody off of Grey's Anatomy or somebody that just saves the world.
That's great.
That's him. He's just, And when he phones me to give me the results of my MRIs, I always just want to be like, thank you so much. But I get the feeling he'd be like, okay, see you later. Kind of cool guy, cool, calm, collected.
I'm hoping, I don't know if it will happen if some of the surgeons hear some of these interviews, because we've got 31 interviews that we're doing, so that they'll all be one day each in March. So everything will be there for the 31 days. And I hope some of them hear it, because I've asked everyone if they want to thank someone, and pretty much everyone has said they want to thank their surgeons. And I hope that they hear it and they actually hear that we're all so grateful and we think you're amazing. You're like our very own Superman.
Just for the sake of it. Well, we're here because of them.
Yeah.
But I just look at that man and think, God, you must be so clever.
I know.
Imagine being able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're amazing. Well, thank you so much that you took the time to come and share your story with us and be a part of Brain Tumour Awareness Month. I'm just really glad that you're doing so well. I hope that all these MRI tests and you have all your scans, that they all continue to be positive and you are able to do everything you want to do in life. Thank you very much. This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.